Best case is about 5 years, worst case 10 years.
The idea of a human colony on Mars is no longer just a dream. With advancements in technology and space exploration, the possibility of establishing a sustainable settlement on Mars is becoming more realistic.
Billions of years ago, it was a huge lake. You can clearly see a river running into it. And this gives you an idea of what it once would have looked like.
From SpaceX, working on the travel, to planning on what to do once we actually get there. 1. Will there ever be a human colony on Mars? Although it sounds tricky, a lot of people believe that we can make a colony happen. NASA has already been practicing with robots and rovers to learn about the planet. They're figuring out what we need to survive. Some experts believe that we might see the first colony by 2050 and even have a city of 1 million people on Mars by then. However, not everyone agrees that this will happen so soon. Mars has some serious problems for humans. Its air is mostly carbon dioxide, which means we can't breathe it. Plus, temperatures can drop really low, around 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's super chilly. Mars also doesn't have a thick atmosphere, so astronauts would be exposed to dangerous radiation from space. But it's not all doom and gloom. NASA and other countries are planning to send astronauts to Mars in the next few decades, like in the late 2030s. Plus, technology is getting better all the time, with rockets that can carry humans and supplies to the red planet. Which one is cuter? Like for the dog, comment for the cat. 2. How is NASA preparing for this? They're hoping to send people soon and turn it into a livable place. Their strategy has 3 main steps. There's the Earth-reliant phase, where astronauts will do experiments on the International Space Station. This helps NASA learn how people can stay in space for a long time. There's also the Proving Ground phase, where NASA will send missions around the Moon. This is like practice for Mars, because astronauts can come back to Earth quickly if they need to. Finally, in the Earth-independent phase, astronauts will get closer to Mars, maybe even landing on its moons, before they finally set foot on the red planet. To make all this happen, NASA is working on some cool technology. They're creating faster rockets and special landing gear to make sure everyone gets to Mars safely. They're also looking for ways to use Martian resources, like water, to help astronauts survive. NASA is not doing this alone. They want to team up with other countries and private companies to share ideas and costs. 3. When can we see humans living there? There's been a lot of robotic missions happening. For example, NASA's rover is already gathering important info about what Mars is like. These robots will help find the best places for humans to land and see if Mars can support life. At the same time, NASA is working on life support systems to keep astronauts safe. Then, in the 2030s, there are plans to send astronauts to Mars around 2029, and they'll probably stay for about 30 days to do research. They even plan to set up a base called Mars Base Alpha by 2031, where astronauts can live temporarily while they test out equipment. 4. But it's not going to be easy. Getting to Mars will be no walk in the park. Since its atmosphere is super thin, they can't just use regular parachutes like we do on Earth. Instead, they'll need special landing gear to slow down their descent safely. Another big problem is the dust storms on Mars. These storms can be super powerful and could block visibility, making it hard for astronauts to land where they want to. Plus, the surface of Mars is rocky and uneven, which could make landing even trickier. Once the astronauts land, they'll need to figure out how to stay safe from radiation and extreme temperatures. Mars can get really cold, and they'll have to make sure their habitats can keep them warm and protect them from harmful rays from the sun. 5. It's not just NASA working on Mars. SpaceX is going to play a huge role in getting people to Mars. They are building the Starship, which will be the biggest rocket ever created. This powerful rocket will not only carry astronauts, but also all the supplies they will need for their journey and life on the red planet. They want to make sure it's super reliable, so astronauts can travel to Mars and come back home safely. With their track record of making rockets and sending them to space, SpaceX is pushing the limits of what we can do in space travel. By creating a strong, reusable spacecraft, they aim to make traveling to Mars affordable and accessible. 6. The Starship will be key. This rocket will be the biggest and most powerful one ever built, and it's designed to take astronauts on amazing journeys through space. With its super strong engines and spacious interior, the Starship can carry not only people, but also all the equipment and supplies needed for life on Mars. When astronauts step inside the Starship, they will feel ready for anything. It will have everything they need for a long trip, like food, water, and even places to sleep. The Starship will also be reusable, which means it can make multiple trips to and from Mars, saving a lot of money and resources. One of the coolest things about the Starship is how it will land on Mars. It will use its special design to slow down and safely touch down on the Martian surface. Once there, it will help astronauts explore the planet, gather samples, and maybe even build the first human base on Mars. 7. The need for nuclear propulsion. Nuclear propulsion is going to be a game changer for trips to Mars. This exciting technology will help us travel faster, making it safer for astronauts. There are two main types of nuclear propulsion: nuclear thermal propulsion and nuclear electric propulsion. With NTP, a special reactor heats up a liquid, usually hydrogen. This heated gas then blasts out of a nozzle to push the rocket forward. It's super efficient, which means it can cut the travel time to Mars from 7 months to just 45 days. That's great because it keeps astronauts safer from things like space radiation. On the other hand, NEP uses a reactor to make electricity. This electricity ionizes a gas like xenon, which then propels the spacecraft. Even though it doesn't push as hard as NTP, it can run for a long time, making it perfect for deep space missions. NASA and DARPA are already working together to test these technologies, aiming to launch a nuclear rocket engine by 2027. If everything goes well, these advancements will make trips to Mars faster and allow astronauts to carry more supplies and equipment. 8. NASA's Artemis program might be the way to get to Mars. The moon will play a super important role in helping people get to Mars. They'll basically make the moon a starting point for adventures into space. In the future, NASA will send astronauts to the moon to set up a base. This base will help them learn how to live in space and use resources they find there, like water and oxygen. The plan is for astronauts to practice all kinds of things on the moon, from building habitats to exploring with robots. This practice will make it easier when they head to Mars. They will discover what works and what doesn't, so they'll be ready for the challenges of living on the red planet. Also, the Artemis missions will include sending cargo and supplies to Mars before astronauts arrive. This means everything the astronauts need, like food and tools, will be waiting for them on Mars. As astronauts gain experience on the moon, they'll become experts at preparing for the trip to Mars. 9. The plan to govern Mars. As we think about setting up a colony on Mars, we'll need to figure out how to govern it. This isn't just about making rules, it's about finding a way to keep everyone happy and safe. Here are some ideas for how this might work. One idea is a representative democracy, where people can elect leaders to make choices for them. This way, everyone has a say in what happens, but it could be tricky to set up in a new place. Another option is a technocracy, where experts in science and technology make decisions. This could be smart for early challenges, but it might leave out regular folks' opinions. Then there's direct democracy, where everyone votes on every issue. This sounds fair, but it could be tough with lots of people. If a company builds the colony, we might see corporate governance, which could be organized but may focus too much on profits. Lastly, there's the idea of an autocracy, where one person leads. This can make quick decisions, but it could also lead to unfairness if that person isn't careful. 10. There's also the Raptor engine. It's going to make these missions easier and more efficient. The Raptor engine uses a fancy type of propulsion that helps it perform better than older rocket engines. It works with a full-flow staged combustion cycle, meaning it can create a lot of thrust while using less fuel. It also runs on liquid methane and liquid oxygen, which is a big deal. We can actually make methane on Mars using local materials, so we won't need to bring tons of fuel from Earth. The Raptor engine will pack a punch with around 230 tons of thrust, which means rockets can move faster and carry heavier stuff, like supplies for a Mars colony. This high power could cut down travel time to just about 45 days instead of the usual 6 to 9 months. That's safer for astronauts. Plus, since SpaceX is focusing on making these engines reusable, the cost of launching could drop dramatically. 11. Let's not forget about the fuel. Methane fuel will play a huge role in helping humans explore and possibly live on Mars. It's super important because it can be made right on Mars, which means astronauts won't have to haul a ton of fuel from Earth. This will make it much easier for them to return home after their missions. One of the best ways to make methane on Mars is through the Sabatier process. This process uses carbon dioxide, which is found in the Martian air, and water ice, which is available on the surface. By mixing these two, astronauts will be able to produce methane for their rockets. Plus, scientists have been working on faster ways to create methane, using special catalysts that simplify the process. This could make it easier to set up the necessary equipment on Mars. Methane also has some cool advantages. For starters, it's easier to store than hydrogen because it can be kept at higher temperatures without needing fancy cooling systems. It burns cleaner too, which means rockets will produce less gunk in the engines. 12. Should SpaceX and NASA team up? Both groups have similar dreams about exploring space, especially with Mars in their sights. Their partnership could really change how we get to the red planet. Right now, NASA is focused on its Artemis program, which aims to send astronauts back to the moon by the late 2020s. SpaceX is working on a special version of its Starship rocket to help with those moon missions. The challenges they solve together for lunar landings will be super helpful for future Mars missions too. Both NASA and SpaceX want to explore beyond Earth, and they can help each other by sharing resources and knowledge. For example, SpaceX's new Raptor engine could be key for these missions. 13. What about radiation on Mars? Radiation on Mars is going to be a big challenge for astronauts planning to explore and live there. Since Mars has a really thin atmosphere and no protective magnetic field like Earth, astronauts will be exposed to more radiation. Here's what they'll face and how they can stay safe. Cosmic rays are high-energy particles from space that hit Mars all the time. Astronauts could get around 0.67 MSV of radiation each day, which is a lot compared to what we get on Earth in a year. Then there are solar particle events, which happen when the sun releases bursts of energy. These can send out intense radiation in a short time, making it super important to have protective measures in place. Long-term exposure to this radiation can increase the risk of cancer and can even cause genetic damage, affecting future generations. It can also lead to serious issues like acute radiation sickness, with symptoms like nausea and fatigue. 14. Can humans grow food on the red planet? Growing food on Mars will be a big challenge, but it's super important if we want to live there for a long time. Since sending supplies from Earth isn't practical, scientists will need to figure out how to grow crops in Martian conditions. The environment on Mars is tough. The air is mostly carbon dioxide, which plants can't use, and it's really cold, with average temperatures around 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Plus, there's a lot of radiation that can harm plants. The soil on Mars is also not great for farming. It's missing organic matter and has chemicals that could hurt plants. One promising idea is using hydroponics and aeroponics, which let plants grow without soil. Hydroponics uses nutrient-rich water, while aeroponics mists plant roots with nutrients, saving water. These methods have already worked on the International Space Station. Another exciting option is creating closed-loop systems where plants recycle waste and produce food and oxygen. Scientists are also looking into genetically modifying crops so they can handle Mars better. 15. How will we build homes on Mars? Building homes on Mars is going to be super important for making sure humans can live there for a long time. Since Mars is a tough place with a thin atmosphere and wild weather, we'll need some creative ways to create safe and comfy habitats. Mars has a lot of challenges. There's a lot of radiation from space, and temperatures can get really cold, so we'll need strong buildings that keep us safe and warm. Dust storms are also common, so houses need to stand up to that too. One way to solve this is by using Martian soil, called regolith, to build homes. We might even use 3D printing to make structures right on Mars using local materials. Modular designs could also be the way to go. These homes can be built in sections, so they're flexible as more people arrive. Some might even use inflatable modules that are quick to set up and cover with regolith for protection. We'll also need to think about how to keep people happy. Having private sleeping areas and shared spaces for hanging out will help everyone feel at home. 16. The role of AI and robots in Mars missions. Using artificial intelligence, AI, and robots for Mars missions will change how we explore the Red Planet in amazing ways. These technologies will help us navigate, collect data, and work safely on Mars. AI will be super helpful for navigation. Since there's a big delay when sending messages from Earth, up to 24 minutes, robots will need to make decisions on their own. For instance, rovers like Curiosity and Perseverance will use AI to find the safest paths across the rocky terrain. They'll be able to avoid obstacles and choose the best routes all by themselves. Data collection will also get a boost from AI. Rovers will gather tons of information, and AI will help analyze it quickly. This means they can identify interesting spots to explore without waiting for instructions. Plus, AI will manage life support systems in habitats, keeping track of resources like water and oxygen to make sure astronauts have what they need. 17. The challenge of finding water on Mars. Finding water on Mars will be one of the biggest challenges for future explorers. Water is essential for life. People need it to drink, grow food, and even create fuel for rockets. Scientists believe that there might be frozen water, called ice, hidden beneath the Martian surface, or even in polar ice caps. Future missions will focus on searching for these water sources using special instruments that can detect ice and moisture. Once they find water, astronauts will need to learn how to use it. They might melt ice to drink it or use it for growing crops. This discovery will be super helpful, as having water on Mars means that humans can live there longer and more comfortably. The quest for water doesn't stop with finding it. Astronauts will also need to think about how to conserve it. Since water is so precious, they will likely recycle water from their daily activities, like washing dishes and even breathing. This closed-loop system will help them use every drop wisely. 18. What's the cost of getting to Mars? Getting to Mars isn't just an exciting adventure, it's also going to be pretty expensive. Launching rockets, building habitats, and sending supplies all come with big price tags. As scientists and engineers plan future missions, they will need to figure out how to make the journey affordable without sacrificing safety or quality. This means being smart about budgets and looking for innovative ways to save money. One strategy could be forming partnerships with private companies that want to get involved in space exploration. By working together, they can share costs and resources. Also, reusing rockets and spacecraft will help cut down expenses. Instead of building new rockets for each mission, companies like SpaceX are working on reusable rockets that can be flown multiple times. That could save tons of money. Budgeting will be a big task, and experts will analyze every detail to make sure everything is planned out. Finding funding through government grants, private investments, and international collaborations will also be crucial. As costs are reduced and efficiency increases, the dream of sending humans to Mars will become more achievable. 19. Will Mars have its own economy? As humans start living on Mars, they might create their own economy. This means that people will trade goods and services to help each other out, just like here on Earth. An economy on Mars will need to work smoothly to make sure everyone can thrive. Imagine astronauts growing crops, building shelters, and sharing resources. People might set up markets to buy and sell what they need, creating a community that relies on cooperation. The economy could start with basic needs, like food and tools, but eventually expand to include fun things too. For example, some people might create entertainment, like games or art. Having an economy will be essential for making life on Mars sustainable. It will encourage innovation as people come up with new ideas and products. The system might be based on barter, where people exchange items directly, or it could involve some form of currency, like digital credits. This will help track trades and ensure fairness. As more people arrive on Mars, the economy will grow, creating opportunities for everyone. Creating a strong economy will be a big part of building a thriving community on the Red Planet. 20. The health risks of long-term space travel. Traveling to Mars is going to be a long journey, and being in space for so long can be tough on the body. Astronauts will face various health risks during the trip, such as muscle loss, bone density issues, and radiation exposure. In zero gravity, their muscles and bones don't have to work as hard, which can weaken them over time. To tackle these problems, future missions will focus on keeping astronauts healthy. They will likely need to exercise regularly using special equipment designed for space. Nutrition will also play a big role. Astronauts will need to eat a balanced diet to maintain their strength. Scientists will study how long-term space travel affects the body and create strategies to minimize risks. Regular health checkups will be essential to monitor their well-being. Mental health will be another critical aspect, as being far from home can be tough. Teams will have to support each other and find ways to relax and enjoy their time on Mars. 21. What will daily life on Mars look like? Daily life will be very different from what we're used to on Earth, but it will also be full of adventures and discoveries. First off, astronauts will have to follow a routine to stay productive. They will spend time working on experiments, maintaining their habitat, and taking care of their plants. Everyone will have specific jobs to do, which will help keep things running smoothly. Each day, they might gather in a common area to share meals, talk about their work, and relax together. Exploring the Martian landscape will be a big part of their lives too. Astronauts will go on expeditions to gather samples and investigate the environment, taking their rovers or other equipment to travel across the surface. They'll also have to communicate regularly with mission control back on Earth, sending updates and sharing their findings. 22. How will we communicate with Earth from Mars? Communication with Earth will be crucial for Mars explorers. Since Mars is far away, sending messages back home will take time. It could take anywhere from about 3 to 22 minutes for a signal to travel between the two planets, depending on their positions in orbit. This delay means that astronauts will need to plan ahead for their conversations and missions. They won't be able to have real-time chats like we do on Earth. Astronauts will use advanced technology like radio signals and satellites to communicate with mission control. They'll send regular updates about their work, share discoveries, and ask for advice. To make things easier, scientists will create special communication systems that can handle the distance and delays. These systems might include automatic responses for common questions, allowing astronauts to get quick help without waiting for a reply from Earth. Will there ever be a human colony on Mars? What if there already is one, but it's been hidden from us?